qualifying sucks, because you want to be as close as possible between you and those pedals, so you have the most amount of feeling, you know, in terms of how many pressure you're going to put, because most of those pedals that are being used at the moment by the drivers are so-called load cell brakes, and what they do is you put pressure on the pedal, and the pedal measures how much pressure you put, and by the amount of pressure you put, that's how much the pedals brake. So yeah, you want to be as close as possible to the pedal. No obstructions like... racing boots are different because they're made for racing, as we actually have a little bit of a spin here from Pablo.
I really don't know.
Look at that.
Couple of spins we've seen from him so far.
Yeah, big spins.
It's tough. It's not easy out there, even for some of the very best. And again, I blame Grand Pooh Bear when it comes to all the problems, because not only was he maniacal enough to pick some of the hardest tracks on the service and in the world, but then also coupled them with rain. I mean, Spa is hard enough on its own, no?
100%. I actually did some laps around Spa in the rain already. Obviously, the rain is very new to iRacing. It is awesome. Honestly, incredible, because you have to kind of learn a completely different track. You can see, for example, on board with Jarno at the moment, he is... Oh my goodness, big moment here as we got Casey Kerwin. He is laughing about it, but if this was real, oh my goodness, he would not be laughing, because that was a huge crash here. He goes back into the pits, and I believe we'll be able to go back out once again to do his lap, but we'll see right here what happened with him, because he is going to do a replay of what happened. Wow, big moment, as we had a car in front losing the car too, hitting the barriers. And Casey Kerwin just completely loses the car, goes over a few of the puddles, and yeah, you can see those skid marks. He was not able to keep it under control. A little bit of a drift, to be honest. No, he did keep it under control. Wow, that was earlier.
Yeah, that would be a great save in a race. Car in front was not so fortunate, but again, that's the thing I love about having these drivers' perspectives, is the second he jumped out of the car, he went and looked at his own replay, right? You can kind of do that mid-qualifying session or in between race A and race B. These drivers are going to be constantly kind of critiquing themselves, learning, what did I do wrong? What can I do better? And the ability to kind of go to their own instant replay and jump around between themselves, what camera angle they want, allows them really to learn a lot of info. As you go on board with Samsoid there, getting towards the end of this qualifying session, just a little bit more than a minute or so left on the clock. Checkered flag out, going to have, again, that buffer for some drivers to come down and complete their timed laps. Samsoid right now does not have a timed lap. Let's see if this one counts. He's in the green to the stripe. He does, 2:27. It took to the very end for him to get a clean lap to count for qualifying.
I feel like I said before, I feel like the rain is a lot worse now than it was at the start. You can see in the amateur class at the moment as well that the iDro at the moment is in P1. And we were saying earlier as well that he wasn't really having the races, but he's got some pace. And in this qualifying session, it looks like he's going to get that P1 and pole position in the second class. So yeah, let's see how that's gonna progress. But obviously with Samsoid now being about a full 10 seconds slower than Casey Kerwin, I don't think he was necessarily 10 seconds slower earlier on in the rain in the race. So I think we're definitely seeing some progression with the rain here as well.
Yeah, that's the other thing too, is there's so many different ways that rain can be implemented here on the iRacing service. You can just set the weather settings to realistic, or it's actually going to take real-world weather forecasts and just decide, is it going to rain or not? Is it going to be cloudy or sunny? Of course, when we are guaranteeing you a wet and a dry race, we're telling the sim that we want it to be wet no matter what, but there are so many different variations, and it's not just a steady rain. To your point, I agree that it's absolutely picked up. I thought we had a little bit of sun break into the clouds. Look at those puddles on the left-hand side of that corner as well for Pablo. So see right along the curb, that standing water, that was not there at the start of the session. But as the rain continues to fall, those puddles have been built up over this qualifying session, and the track has probably gotten worse since they did their first lap.
I think Pablo has mistaken Belgium, Spa-Francorchamps for Tokyo, doing some Tokyo drifts at the moment. I don't think he's trying to warm up the tires. It feels like he's just, playing with the car. He's not really on a lap at this time. I think he has accepted that the lap that he was on, as he actually, before we moved to Pablo's car, he did a full 360 in Eau Rouge, which is the long uphill hander. But yeah, we are getting to the end of qualifying right now. It looks like Casey Kerwin has got a dominant P1 in qualifying. Jarno Opmeer very close. Daniel in P3. And then in the GT3 section, Edro getting P1. And HCDZ, who was doing very well in the first race, obviously at Silverstone, in P2 with Sexo Gaming in P3.
And there's a look. He's pulling up the weather conditions. You saw it for a moment there, kind of an hour-by-hour weather forecast to try to see, is this rain going to get worse? Is it going to get better? And there's a nice peek at the qualifying order. To your mention, Kerwin, Jarno, and Daniel Gray, the top three in the prototype category. And you speak it, we see it on board with Gray as we are getting set for race number 1 here at Spa. They're going to pace behind the safety car for just a little bit. And we've talked so much about this Spa racetrack. It's changed so much as well throughout the years, Tom. It originally ran for over 15 kilometers of public roads back in the day, and it's been changed quite a bit, but it is still, one of the most challenging circuits you'll find anywhere, and clocking in at over 7 kilometers in length is by far the longest track we'll see here today.
Yeah, it's incredible. I went to the F1 race last year with all the F1 cars coming through Eau Rouge, which is the very steep uphill around the start of the track, and it's crazy how much of a elevation change there is. You can see it in the game, but in real life, you can just see it so much more, like with the depth of field and stuff, and the cars kind of bottom out as you go over that part of the track. So yeah, that's probably what got out Casey Kerwin as well, with obviously the huge elevation change and his car just about being a bit unstable. Because that's how realistic this game is. It's not even a game, I would say. It's a simulation, iRacing. And that hopefully will not cause out or cause any of the drivers to get caught out again. But I am almost 100% sure that it will at least catch off guard a few of the drivers still.
Yeah, all of these tracks are laser scanned. iRacing does all of their tracks themselves. So you've probably raced Spa on other racing titles, but not Spa and iRacing, right? It's all scanned by the team down to 1/4 of an inch accuracy with laser scanning. And here we go through the right-hander 19, left-hander turn 20 complex for the chicane. And then we're going to be ready to go for race A in the rain at Spa. Kerwin and Opmeer on the front row. We're on board with Daniel Gray looking for the green lights.
Wow, 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 as Daniel straight away goes for move then. It looks like Jarno on the inside actually went a bit slower. Of course, having the inside of the track right there. Casey Kerwin having a good start, already driving away as, big moment, and it's going to be Daniel losing the car, and now a big traffic jam. He's going to have to hope nobody will hit him here. Jarno goes up to P2 with a bit of a gap in front, but that's only good for him because you don't want to have that spray in your eyes. So I think he's very happy that he has a little bit of space. Oh, the big moment! It's Casey who completely loses the car. He's upside down at the moment.
We saw Jarno lifted heavy going to Eau Rouge. Tom, you talked about that sector. It didn't look like Casey lifted nearly as much and got huge hit into the wall. And Jarno with a bit of a chuckle as he drives on by. Frustration from Casey Kerwin. And this points battle has been flipped on its head all of a sudden.
That was crazy. As obviously we saw him disappear into the sunset almost, but it was no sunset. It was a cloud of rain. As now we see Casey Kerwin checking out the replay. You can see his bumper still being in the turn and himself upside down on the exit of the turn. You see it right here. Let's see what happens.
He's giving us the replay for us, and just that little twitch, right? The problem with Eau Rouge, Tom, is you can't save it anywhere, right? Right there, that twitch. Normally, if you counter steer into it, that's bad. But even if he let that car spin right there when it broke to the right for the first time, you just cannot make a mistake in a corner like that at all.
Yeah, 100%. And like in Eau Rouge, because it's kind of a little dent in the track almost, there's a lot of standing water there, and it can just catch you off guard, like it has done already twice there for Casey Kerwin. Big moments here, though, as Pablo tries to go up the inside. Remember, though, a little bit of watch on the inside. You can see it kind of... the glare on the track. You can see that there's water there, but he manages to avoid it and gets the move done. Up another position. Not bad.
Yeah, that standing water is what you want to avoid. Normally, you're going to want to apex the corner by hitting those curbs on the right-hand side, right? Right side tires on the curbs. That's the quickest way around the corner. But because you can see that shine of the standing water, they cannot take that line that they normally would. And this onboard look here with Pupo Lopez is an even better perspective of the rain, but also the windshield on these prototype cars isn't that big. So you're taking poor visibility and kind of timesing it by 2 because the windshield in these cars is pretty limited as he's trying to take a look on Jarno Opmeer for the race lead in the prototypes.
Big moments here as, well, we'll have to wait and see if they both come through the first turn, or Eau Rouge here, which is the name of the next turn. He can barely see anything being behind Jarno Opmeer. Goes a bit wide. Jarno just about has a little bit of an instability on the rear and loses the car a bit. Loses a position and goes and comes in behind over Pupo Lopez. Pupo Lopez now in P1. He locked up into Eau Rouge. That's what Jarno is saying at the moment. And that's what we saw as well with Casey Kirwan.
So the first time in a wet weather race that Jarno Opmeer loses the race lead, and it is Pupo Lopez to the front, maybe taking a clear lead in the Pro Category Drivers' Championship with Kirwan in last P10, and Opmeer getting passed up. And this is the onboard look from your leader for a moment. Now we jump back to Pablo GZ, currently running 7th in class. No real cars around him. He's got a bit of his own spot. You can see he had to yield there, cut the racetrack a little bit, so he'll have to slow down, give up the time gained. These drivers, you'll see that on occasion, if they cut a corner, the sim will give them X amount of time, whether it be 30 seconds or whatnot, to yield about 3 seconds of time to make up for the time gain. That's what we were seeing there on board with him.
Just look how awesome his setup looks right here as well. It is almost as if you're inside of the cockpit at the moment. Like with a lot of these iRacing streamers, they really kitted out their simulator to look as if they are in a cockpit. But rest assured, this is not fully the game we're seeing at the moment. As he goes a bit wide, Pupo Lopez looking good so far, is going wide, and as Jarno went wide and he took the position, now Jarno takes the position as Pupo Lopez goes wide. I feel like we're going to see back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, with obviously the one who's most consistent taking the win maybe here, with now Jarno Opmeer once again back in the lead.
The rain taketh and the rain giveth. And I think that's what we saw there with Jarno Opmeer and Pupo Lopez. One exchange, a mistake from Jarno. Then second, a mistake from Pupo Lopez, allowing Jarno to go back to the top spot. And those two drivers continue to swap out first and second. Well, who's the third car in this battle? It's on board there with Sampsoid, third in class. You can see in the rear view that's Strati and Quicketized as well, fourth and fifth, challenging from behind, but he's kind of in the middle. As now Pablo GZ on board in P7, staying ahead of one car off track behind him.
Now, if we look a little bit about to the GT3 cars right here, El Rey Giddy going up 6th position, Wacky Jackie going up a lot of positions as well. Of course, Wacky Jackie currently leading with his teammate in the championship, the team championship, together with Jarno Opmeer. If they keep it like this, and they can get a big gap of an advantage after this race. As now, we have got Wacky Jackie on board at the moment. The team championship leader with very close behind Grand Pooh Bear, the organizer of this amazing event, obviously. They're now side by side and they actually touched a little bit there. So that's going to be adding up to those warnings. Going into turn 1 now. Who is going to brake later? I think it's going to be Grand Pooh Bear on the left-hand side trying to go for a move. Will it be Wacky Jackie? Give him the space on the outside. Yes, he will. Grand Pooh Bear now trying to keep it close. Oh, it's an epic battle here. Going up into Eau Rouge. Who will keep it there? At the moment, it's Wacky Jackie. But will Grand Pooh Bear be able to get a better traction zone out of this turn onto the long straight? It looks like he's able to keep it closer to the inside. And there you go. Better traction zone. And move done for Grand Pooh Bear. Beautiful overtake here as they kept it super close, going all the way up into one of the toughest turns on the track.
That was really impressive because being in the kind of mist of the car in front of him, I didn't think Pooh Bear was in a spot that he would want to be in, but he was able to navigate Eau Rouge better and to get that spot. So big ups to him on that move. And Melina behind Grand Pooh Bear right there. She's P6. He's up the road in 5th. She also was able to make a pass at Wacky Jackie. So he'll slide down to what is going to be 6th in class as they continue to run. And these cars still all over each other. Got a long way to go, and back up with Corkatize towards the front of the field. P5 in class with the prototypes. And again, the rain, I think, is the worst it's been all afternoon so far at Spa. It has only gotten worse since qualifying started.
Yeah, he's actually at the moment the quickest car on track. As you can see, he's pushing. He's using the curbs, and I'm very scared. When I was doing this track earlier in the week, I was very scared to use the curbs because it can just catch you off guard anywhere, really. Especially, oh, here we go, big moment. Melina was in the back earlier, loses the car, touches the wall, and I think just about manages to not get too much damage on the car. But it could well be that Melina would have to go into the pits. Luckily, she is still laughing. She is still happy to be out on track there and to still be in the fights as well. It wasn't a major crash, luckily a small one.
And somebody who's not smiling right now is Casey Curwood. We saw the frustration with him when he had that mammoth of an accident up Eau Rouge on the opening laps of this race. He is still down last place in class, and that car is not getting any better. And there is one thing that you cannot do on a wet racetrack, Tom, and that is will the car to go any faster, right? Driving more aggressively, pushing the car is not going to help in the rain. And look at Corkatize here. He's got 2 cars right on top of him. That's the battle for 3rd, 4th, and 5th.
This is crazy. Honestly, right in behind of them. He didn't even know it was 2 cars. 2 cars appear out of nowhere. He saw one of them and then boom, you've got another one. Now, this is a very, very exciting fight. It's Corkatize with the fastest lap times of anyone at this moment in the GTP class. So he's going to try and see if he can find an opening. But where will the opening be? It must be a mistake happening sometime soon.
They're almost fighting in front of him. Curious if he could find an opening where they're too focused about each other, and maybe Corkatize could find an opening and sneak through. Right now, no opportunities. Now he gets right on the gearbox. That's Strati up the road, looking to the left-hand side. Does he find an opening here? He's going to try to go the long way around. It's going to require a lot of brakes. What a move right there.
Very good move here around the outside, where I noticed there's a little bit of a puddle on the inside as well, or not even the inside, the whole of the track, especially on the outside. He just went straight over that puddle, and yeah, he didn't even seem to really lock up or anything. And then straight away before he turned in, already was in front of Samsoid. Easy does it. That's how you do it. As now we're on board with Strati, now closing in as well to Corkatize. The more battles they do, the closer they will be compared to each other. With Jarno Opmeer at the moment having a good lead of about 3.4 seconds on anybody. So yeah, he's chilling at the moment. Chilling. Like we said earlier, you want to be in P1. Anybody wants to be in P1, but especially in these rainy races. Because as you can see at the moment, he doesn't even have any obstructions in his eyesight. It's as if it's dry. I mean, not in terms of the handling. It definitely feels like wet for him, that's for sure. But yeah, he doesn't have to go and almost squint his eyes to see which car is in front or even where the turn is going to start.
And look at that, all the way off the throttle, basically, through that. And even then, the race car is just evil. I mean, it does not want to turn. It wants to slide off of the racing surface. He's going to be able to use that 5-second buffer he's got right back here to the Pupa Lopez into P2. He's going to be smart about this and try to work the gap. And now Corkatized with problems. He was 4th place. Strati is going to make the move. Looks like Pablo GZ also gets by. And he is forced to take a tow to pit road. It is all gone wrong for Corkatized.
He looked defeated right there. He knew it straight as he hit the car against the wall in Eau Rouge. Like, that turn has got out almost all the main drivers who were quick. I feel like it's a thing of risk and reward here. He was one of the quickest drivers for a long time. But it just, you know, if you want to be quick, you also have to make sure you don't have to go into the pits. And now 2 of the quickest drivers have hit the wall and are in the pits. Of course, with Casey Kerber now actually putting in some really quick lap times. 5 seconds quicker per lap compared to those in the midfield of the GTP. So yeah, well, I mean, 5 seconds I'm saying. Well, he's just about going 1 second quicker than his fastest lap. Absolutely rapid. Now, the question is whether those new tires will help him a bit as well. Probably yes. Of course, having not overheated them too much, getting himself into the groove in the wet. Now overtaking those GT3 cars. And that's what we're going to see soon as well. Of course, those GTPs, which are quicker cars, overtaking the GT3s. Now, we're in a big battle between Pablo and the car in front, Strati. Pablo looking to be a little bit more slidey than the rest, no, Evan?
He's doing everything he can and has been putting the pressure on pretty consistently in this battle for P5 and 6. Look at that, ducks out to the outside. Does he go the long way around again? Right to the bumper now, looking to the inside. Back half of the racetrack, turn 16 as they head down this final complex. Just hard when you can't get the run off of the corner. There will be an ample braking zone opportunity off to the chicane. But can you do it when you can't see? Oh, and it all goes wrong. Around goes Pablo GZ. He saves the car. I think he kept it out of the outside wall.
That was very, very skillful, making sure that he didn't hit the wall there. I think anyone else who doesn't have a lot of experience like Pablo in iRacing would have absolutely shunted into the wall and ended up in the pits as well, trying to repair the car. Now Strati driving away, actually having a little bit of breathing room. Probably that heart rate, I mean, at the moment, 100 beats per minute, not as high as Pablo was before. Can go down a bit. You can see it go down slowly but surely. 97 and going up again. As he knows, he will have to go and endure Eau Rouge. The question is whether that will actually, convert 1-to-1 with where he is on the track. But let's just pretend it does.
And here's a look back up to the top of the leaderboard. A 5.3 second lead for Jarno Opmeer as the race leader. Lap number 6 in the works. Here at Spa, he's got plenty of clean road, and Daniel Gray, was that a bobble or a wreck? He's frustrated. I think that was a catch for Gray, as looked like that was the tail end of Eau Rouge again. I don't care if I'm in a pack, if I'm on my own, the one corner that's going to scare me every lap is Eau Rouge. And he's trying to get to the back of Heike, I think, up the road for position. This is the battle for P6 right now.
Oh, that was close. Very, very close. He is trying to get close, getting a bit frustrated indeed. Where is he going to do it? It's super tough because you don't want to, get into that slipstream, whereas normally you would get in the slipstream. But if you get in the slipstream here, and if you're not close enough like he is right now, for example, you can't even see the car in front. So you kind of have to dug out all of that spray. But then you don't get that extra boost, little boost when the air in front is clean and makes you go quicker. So, for example, right here. Oh, he goes up the inside. Will he hit him? Oh, just about. Doesn't hit the rear. That could have been a big moment. If there was a tap there, that could have been Heike. Absolutely spun around, but Heike doesn't look phased.
Look how
like he is,
calm it looks when you're the car in front out of a two-car battle. No spray. It's still wet. It's still the same treacherous track, but it's almost like you could have a cup of tea without that spray. Just so much more calm, where when we were on board with Daniel Gray, it's bobbing and weaving, just fighting for a glimpse of the road in front of you. As up front looks like the white flag in the air. One more trip around Spa in the wet weather. Race A. Some lapped cars in the mix. Jarno's advantage still about 5 seconds over the rest of the field is Pablo GZ in a big battle right here. I think that might have been the pass on Heike for 5 and 6.
It was indeed. Heike did not keep him behind all the way throughout, but it's not over yet because there's one more lap to go also for Pablo. So let's see whether Heike will be able to, get his nerves once again in check and go for that overtake, as we're now on board with the car of Pablo Lopez. Also seeing a car in front, which I don't think is Jarno. No, it is not. Going off track, actually, the car in front. That must be either Quirketized or Casey Kurban. I think Quirketized in front. He lets him by,
scary.
which is very welcome by him. And Jarno at the moment absolutely focused to make sure he doesn't make a single mistake on this last lap. Because if he does, everything can go back. He's not doing it. No, he was
just heard
saying
an
it
internal
himself.
dialogue there. Yeah. Do I go for the fast lap just for my pride? We saw you had pointed it out. Casey Kerwin to put down the fastest lap, but again with his accident, he was still so far down the running order. It only meant so much, and kind of the devil on his shoulder. Jarno thinking about doing it, but I think he's going to instead decide to nurse this car through the final couple of corners.
Yeah, and I don't believe there's any points for fastest lap either. It's only bragging rights. So the question is whether he wants the bragging rights, but it seems like nope. Let's make sure we go for those points, because remember, there's a big prize pool up for grabs in both the teams, captains, as well as teammates championships.
Some more GT3 traffic to work on through. Jarno's able to navigate that as he heads through Now the final few sets of corners. There's a lot of mist up the road, a lot of GT3 cars battling through Blanchimont, 17, 18, and then we'll get down to the final chicane. You can see his gas and throttle inputs bottom left of his screen. A little bit of brake there. Cautious on the throttle, coming back to it. And the last thing you want is to be in danger in the final turn. And yeah, he sees the road is blocked. They're side by side in front. There's contact in front of your race leader. And Jarno gonna tiptoe through the final corner to the checkered flag to hang on.
Oh my goodness, that could have been, well, it could have been, it was very close, but that could have also meant that Jarno was pushed back into P2 there. Purple Lopez ended up very close, only 1.5 seconds. We still have Daniel Gray in the battle as well, 0.8 in front or behind over Heike at the moment, who has dropped down a little bit, and he might see if he can, go for the opportunity. Ooh, yeah, he's keeping the car under control just about, slipping and sliding through the corner. Will he go for the move on the inside? He will try to get closer, but I think he is going to just make sure he comes home, because he went for the move there. It was very, very, very far behind. It would have been tough. He says it himself. He is not super happy with this race or how this race went. He knows he can do more, and he has done more in the first race. But of course, remember, we have another race coming up very shortly, and that one will not be wet. It will be dry. So hopefully those of the drivers that didn't necessarily do well here in the rain got caught out. Oh, big moment here actually, as Grand Prix. We just keep tuning in at the best time here, Evan.
Every time we look on board with him, it's not going good. I think he's going to think it's targeted every time we look. There was a car spun in front of him on the track. He got sideways, slid into that car. I think my favorite part is the perspective on the bottom right is he's got the motion rig, right? I don't know if we've seen anybody else with that so far tonight. So when the car brakes, it'll kind of lurch forward. When he gets under power, it'll kind of lurch him backwards. Again, it ties into the conversation on how you can do almost anything you want with your sim rig. I've done some of those motion sims. I don't know if there's anything more fun than being on a motion rig. Maybe you combo that with the VR, but that might give you a bit of a headache. But that thing's a ton of fun, and he's smiling through it at a racetrack that he really enjoys and trying to bring it home to the end of this final lap of the race. Not in a bad spot. P12 overall, looks like third in class currently for Grand Poubert. Yeah, Borja the leader and the winner, I think, for the GT3s. Saxo Gaming P2, but it might not be done.
Yeah.
Here comes a challenge to the inside. Do they touch almost?
Oh my goodness, it's close. Like you were saying, it could still be P4, and he wants to be on that podium. Of course, in his own event. Will he be able to do it? It's dancing up right there. It's dancing up as he goes through the last two turns. There might be a send from behind. It doesn't look like it's close enough, though. It is going to be Grand Poubert over the line now. If he gets a good exit, just make sure you keep it in one piece. Yes, he does. It's going to be a podium for Grand Poubert in race 3. And the first race in the wet around Belgium.
Let's go.
Well done. He's happy with that one. The spin included on the last lap at Grand Poubert. He just said it, defensive driving. He gets a podium. Things are going in the right direction for him.
Well, I hate to bring it up, but I think he could take it. Grand Poubert, first of all, congratulations on the podium. But Casey Kerwin, defensive driving, more like, flying driving right there. I don't know what that was at the start, but it set the tone for how difficult it would be, even for the most experienced of drivers, Evan. And we experienced that over the course of this race. It was a challenging turn, and it was a challenging situation, but it was really great to see them kind of take that on and figure out how to get through this track, where many times the cars in front, the track in front, it was all indiscernible from one another with the spray coming behind.
Yeah, and all that Casey Kerwin talk is now the Jarno talk with how well he's done in the last two. But I think, we don't see the Caseys and the Jarnos make those self-inflicted errors a lot, right? We saw both of them have mistakes. Casey's most notably because, well, the race car looks like an airplane, but it shouldn't be one, and it turned into one. Neither of those drivers would be pushing those cars to that limit if they didn't feel like the other drivers in this session could pressure them, right? If they felt like they just drive to a 20-second win, they would take it easy through Eau Rouge. There'd be no mistakes. So the fact that the very best are making mistakes really is a credit to the other 18.
Yeah, and it's also, Tom, indicative of the fact that, yes, there's respect there, But in some ways, when you're on these racetracks, what has been showcased to be the strategy that's won and overall everyone's expectations kind of been the thing that has worked has been slightly defensive driving, limiting mistakes. Evan had mentioned it, you're racing really against the track here in the rain, not against your other opponents. So maybe a mental shift there to go, yes, we know we've got some great racers that are coming behind me, but I still have to understand that the less mistakes I make, the better chance that I actually have to win this.
100%, and I also think there are two completely different races in the dry and in the wet.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes just taking that overtake from the car behind, letting them overtake you, doesn't have to be super bad either, because putting pressure on the car in front has shown to be very successful. A lot of the cars, losing it after having a little bit of pressure from behind. So sometimes, not just being like, oh man, I want to be in this position, but just being like, okay, I'll let you go, and then later on I'll get you back when you're squiggling, trying to keep the position. That could also be a good strategy.
We've got great consistency from Jarno. We've also seen it on our GT3 cars, Borja as well as Saxo. They've podiumed, I think, twice now out of our races that we've seen, 3 over the course of the day so far. But let's take a look at the standings and see where everything is after 3, with one more dry race here on Francorchamps. Oh my goodness. Jarno, obviously, with the 25 again, that is going to be huge, Evan. It seems like Jarno, and whether it's Casey up in front, Pulpo Lopez is somehow finding a way to hit that consistent second, obviously a threat, and continues to be throughout this day.
Yeah, that's what it's going to come down to, is the consistency, right? And if Jarno can consistently get wins with 2 in a row, then that's a whole different story. But aside from Jarno and Casey, the headliners with the checkered flags, the Pulpo Lopez has been there in the top 3, in the top 5 for almost all of them. That's going to be the key that wins you a captain's championship, or even a overall team championship as well. And, a gap of 1.5, that thing really closed in towards the end, and you can see they'll add those points together. Casey Kerwin, that 2 might as well be a goose egg, because he drops to P4.
Man, big stuff there, Tom. Our top 3 from captains looking good so far. Pablo Pulpo Lopez, and of course Jarno out in the lead here with Casey right behind, and Samsoid finishing out our top 5. A little surprised that maybe, Tony, we had talked about a little bit. Any idea on what that might be just looking in, or just obviously 2 rain tracks out of 3 could just be a difficult start?
It is tough. It is really tough. And I think also with all this chaos happening, it doesn't really give a true realistic view of let's say, the pace, right? I think Tony has got caught up. You saw it as well in the first race, obviously, in Silverstone. Got caught up at the start when he was on pole position, or at least he got P1 in the first lap, and then lost the car. And then after that, if you make one tiny mistake, it's super hard to get back into it. Now, as we look at the team race standings, actually, Borja, once again, looking very, very dominant here. Now, also a little bit behind, El Rey Idro. Idro ending up 6 laps behind there, even though I believe, he did get pole position, so something must have happened there once again with Idro. And I think there's more to come from here there too. With Wacky Jackie in P6, that of course is going to be, once again, a good result with his teammate standings with Jarno, and of course that legendary result that we saw at the very end with Grand Poubert in P3, which he'll be very happy with that we saw that as well. So hopefully more to come here from different podium sitters, but Borja and Saxo looking very good in that teammate standings at the moment.
Yes, you could see it here. Grand Poubert as well with just the 26 points coming in. But when you stack that on top of Pulpo, who's got, I think, 51 points, that's going to change things when you look at the overall standings for both of these teams. But as far as the teammate standings, remember, those viewing will have prizing for both our captains and our teammates separately, as well as them in an aggregate score together. But Borja out in the lead, Saxo right behind, and they're clearing the rest of the lobby currently. Wacky Jackie, 20 points before he closes in on that. But what does that shape up for? Wacky Jackie says, I'm okay with just 3rd, because when I put that with Jarno, Evan, we're first place by at least 9 points here, and we are feeling very good about our chances.
Yeah, it's big. And again, you look at the points, first track compared to the second, you've got the likes of Grand Poubert and Pulpo Lopez, 33 points just in race 1 alone here at Spa. The first track, they got 44 points combined in races A and B. So they are on the upswing. You look to the bottom, both Casey Kerwin and Agman 3R get second to last in class, 2 points per. That 4 is tough. They were leading after the first one. That 47 is tough. Now, it does feel like that Jarno and Wacky Jackie are pulling away. It is fair to say, guys, we've only done 3 races of 8, so we're not even halfway. So those gaps, as quickly as they've ballooned, I think they can shrink back in even more so, but you certainly never want to be playing from behind.
And remember, we haven't seen Jarno Opmeer start a race from the back, because remember, there is a reverse grid right there, and that could, shake up everything. So I think we'll see a little bit of a different view here in this next race that's coming up.
Yeah, it's been great to see the differences. Now I want to highlight it for those to come. What can we expect? Evan, I'll start with you. Going into the same track now on day, it's different to kind of reverse it and have the more challenging side. What are the expectations with these drivers and any adjustments they might make going into race number 2?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is the lack of qualifying, right? So when we started at Silverstone, we qualified for the dry session. So there wasn't a ton of fireworks, right? The faster cars started up front in the dry. Kind of no shockers there. The difference here is, of course, it's hard to kind of take a sample size from a wet weather race. Now, certainly fast cars are fast, but it's not going to be as simple as the best car starting last, the worst car starting up front. Casey Kerwin was second to last in the prototype class. Means he's going to be starting on the front row in the dry weather. What did he do last time he started up front in the dry weather? He won it, right? So there is an equal and opposite reaction every time we invert the field, every time somebody has a good race or a bad race. That's my biggest takeaway is it's not going to be as cut and dry, no pun intended, but you're going to have to look for how some of those cars who benefit from the invert can make it happen on the dry.
Newton would agree with you on that one as well. Tom, what do you think? Expectations going into race 2 here?
I mean, honestly, I think it's just showing now, already now in race 4, that the format is working, right? We'll see a completely different race now, and with Jarno Opmeer at the back, will he be able to come through the grid? Will Casey Kerwin drive away? We'll have to wait and see, and I think we're going to see that right now, don't we?
Yeah, well, Jarno and Wacky Jackie in the lead as it stands. One more race to go on Spa-Francorchamps. We'll take it away with you two as the race begins.
So the big thing, Tom, remember, no qualifying, right? So it's going to be the invert that'll set the grid for this one. They can have a moment to warm up, but you can see that grid button on the screen there for Tony Kanaan. We're ready to go. So the invert will put Quirkatized to the lead of the prototype group. Casey Kerwin is second. Tony's talking about Casey right now. Daniel Gray and Heike, the top 5. And to your point that you had just made, we have yet to really seen what Jarno can do from the back in the dry, right? He did not get the result that he wanted at Silverstone in the dry, but is a perfect 2 for 2 on the wet. What can he do in the dry, head-to-head against some of the iRacing ringers?
100%, 100%. From P10, they're watching me on the stream. We are. Do you have any special words, Jarno? He's saying hello. Everybody say hello back to Jarno. Let's see if a fan favorites Jarno will be able to, get those points. If he finishes in P10 where he is right now, it's only 1 point. You can see on the left-hand side, 25 for P1. So it's crucial that if you want to, get the maximum amount of points, you need to be in those top 3 positions. Anywhere there, and you're golden to be able to score a good amount of points. But anywhere behind of P3, so from P4 and lower, you only get an increment of 2 points per position. Except from P9 to P10, it's only 1 point of a difference. As we hear the Fufuzela once again on Pablo Lopez's stream, we are ready to go, I think. I think we need the Fufuzela every single race start, don't we, Evan?
I'm with it. I think that's how we should just start the race. Standing start, and the Vuvuzela tells us
no green light, just
going.
Vuvuzelas.
Well, here's, by the way, what turns 19 and 20 look like, because we could not tell it all in the first one. In the dry, back half of the racetrack, this kind of final corner chicane complex. And then it is, turn 1's going to be interesting because it's so tight. The proper line is to yield all the way to the left, but it leaves the bottom open. Who dares to make a move into turn number 1? Safety car yields to Casey Kerwin and Quirkatized on the front row. Green flag in the air. It's clean racing at Spa.
It is indeed. As we go into turn 1, I think Casey is no longer in P1. It's actually going to be Quirkatized then, as we have side-by-side battles already. It's going to be easier, though, going side-by-side if they want to, if they dare, into Eau Rouge. But Casey loses P1 with Quirkatized leading at the moment. Now, you can see full throttle through Eau Rouge, which is this section. And earlier, we would not be able to see anywhere close to the speeds that we're seeing right there. Now, this straight is where you can duck into the cars behind, or in front, and get closer using that slipstream. And they are going to be doing that today, as we can see right here. A big move up the inside, going a little bit wide as well. Luckily, no touchy-touchies for Pulpo Lopez, but he is going to be losing a few positions with Jarno Opmeer already up at the P7.
And Pulpo Lopez may have a penalty for some of the moves on lap number 1. Saw black flag on his screen. Keep a half eye to see if he's forced to pit road to serve a penalty. That would be a big storyline, given where he sits in the championship. On board with Jarno, looking up the road to Heike, then Strati, then Daniel Gray. A lot of passing opportunities and a much cleaner start for these prototypes here in the dry. Look at them all stacked up. Nobody able to pull away.
Wow, and Grand Pooh-Bear, of course, starting towards the back of the grid right here, already up at the P5. Of course, Idro starting on pole position for this race. Now, still in P1, so hopefully he can get a good result after not a great race 1 and race 2 here. But as we are on board now with Casey Kerwin, he is looking to mount an attack for P1. We'll see if he goes for the overtake, if he'll have any competition for the rest of the race. But he is not yet in P1. He has to go for the move. He chooses the inside and that will be the outside for the next turn in the bus stop chicane. He tries to utilize a little bit of the curbs, goes all the way out wide, but no, he's already passed and he doesn't go out wide. He doesn't need to leave space, and that means he is in P1. And now the putting in laps will begin for Casey Kerwin. Can he put himself in a gap to the car behind?
So Kerwin goes back to the lead. We jump back to Sampsoid in a battle that looks like it's Pulpo Lopez directly in front. 9th and 10th in class is where this battle is for. Look at all those prototypes up the road as we're going to go full throttle again through Eau Rouge, getting the curb in, middle, and out of the corner, and then down the Camel Straight. You're going to see speeds in excess of 300 kilometers an hour, and you can see in front, Pulpo Lopez kind of yielding to the cars in front to get a bit of a draft. No passing opportunity there, but that heavy braking zone is certainly a good place to do it now through Lake Combs. 7, 8, and 9 turns on the racetrack as you go back on board with Jarno.
Ooh, bit of a touch then. You can see it at the top of the screen. Contact 0x. So the game thought it wasn't Jarno Opmeer's fault, but he is now in the middle of the pack here. It seems like everyone is having very similar pace. So yeah, they have to wait their moment. As in front, you'll see cars getting out of the slipstream, trying to look and to kind of scare the drivers in front. But yeah, we'll see whether they can find an opportunity here soon. Jarno Opmeer looking to keep a little bit more space to the car in front at the moment as we go on board with Grand Pooh-Bear, who is at this point in time in P3 in his class. There's a big moment in front. Idro loses the car, and once again it ends in tears, but it's not over yet, of course. But in the start of the race, tears on for Idro here as he loses a lot of positions. Now that promotes Grand Pooh-Bear up at the P2, and the car in front that we're seeing at the moment, Akbiner, is in P1. He is, of course, teammates with Casey Kerwin. So if Akbiner goes and does a good job, then we will... Ooh, as he goes wide though, very wide for Grand Pooh-Bear. He does go for the move, and he maintains the position, brakes as late as possible, and now Grand Pooh-Bear in the lead in his class. Epic fights.
He has done 24-hour races here at iRacing's virtual Spa, and now he finds himself in the lead in the GT3 category. Meanwhile, back up with the prototypes. Look at this Hornet's Nest on board with Heike, but up the road, it's Jarno, it's Strati, it's Pablo GZ. All of this going on about 3rd position on back. Jarno thought about a move that time, but you do not want to go side by side through Eau Rouge, and he will tuck back and line. But now down the Camel Straight, he's going to get the draft. Do you dare duck out of line? A little bit of slipstream. Close it in quick to turn 7. Looks to the inside. Here we go under braking.
Beautiful move right here. He has to leave a little space on the inside, and which he does. A lot of contact because are at the top of the screen, and now more contact. He has to just about back out of the move, and then straight away as he's out of line, he has somebody trying to go up the inside. No, Jarno thinks I'm going to go attack. Attack is the best defense, and it's showing at the moment because if he didn't attack there, the car behind of him would have gone for the overtake. Pulpo Lopez trying to see if he can go and gain a little bit of an advantage. He almost had it, but Jarno was no. I will make sure I make an advantage before you are going to take the advantage over me.
It's a gutsy spot to make a move, and that's what it's going to take in these 15-minute sprint races. Again, I mentioned we were talking about Grand Pooh Bear, right? So many times these are endurance races. There's a big off there, and Oatmere jumps on the opportunity, and Jarno takes another spot away as he continues to climb the leaderboard. But you cannot be conservative, especially in the dry, when you can put the race car where you want to. Anytime somebody makes the smallest of mistakes, you've got to jump on it, because if you made a mistake, well, the car behind you would do the same. And look at Pupo Lopez looking up the road. Heike yields left. That's Strati. That's Jarno, the lead car in this group of 4. A lot of contact that time through the chicane. And Pupo Lopez going to be forced to pit road. You can see black flag penalty. He is forced to come down pit road. He's going to give up a ton of positions.
That is unfortunate for Pupo Lopez. He was still right in the fight, but he has to go and get through the pits there. And as long as nobody else gets a penalty, that must be race over for him. I don't think he has the pace to close in all that gap to the rest of the field. In the meantime, though, on board with Casey Kerwin, we are looking to be, at the moment, 1.2 seconds away from everybody else. So, to be honest, not bad in terms of everybody who is, staying close still. But there we go. We see a purple first sector, which means he's quickest in that first sector of anybody out on track. He is unleashing the pace at this time. But shout out as well, in the meantime, to Tony Kanaan, who's still in P3, holding up that podium position and actually having very decent pace here in the dry. I think it must have been the wet that was caught, that kind of caught him off guard a few times. We've had 2 races in the wet in a row, and that first race was kind of a warm-up almost for all the drivers, because it was the first race. So we might see more from Tony Kanaan, and we're seeing that right now already.
He's doing a great job, and it's only going to get more familiar for Tony as we go. He's competed at Daytona International Speedway in the past. That's where we're headed to next as we take this Rivals Duo Tournament stateside and across the pond to Daytona International Speedway next. Right now, though, still trying to fight off one of the world's toughest circuits in Spa. You're on board with Samsoid. Work to do, though, as he's 9th in class, but there's opportunities, right? You see Heike, you see Strati up the road. There are opportunities to make some moves, but seems like I always find it funny when drivers lean when they're going into the corner, right? Almost trying to will that car to rotate, but typically you don't kind of lean and try to will the car through the corner if it's handling the way you want. And I think he was the one talking earlier when we were racing at Silverstone about the downforce, and if he wanting a little bit more, so maybe as well struggling to get the car to rotate quite to his liking.
In the meantime as well, HCDC in the teammates class has gone up to P2, overtaking El Regiri. We're on board at the moment with Stradi, who is having to look behind the mirror, actually going defensive, and that is going to hurt his exit, which you can see at the moment, but luckily the car behind didn't get a good exit either. He is going to try and keep that position for the moment. P7, of course, getting plenty of points, but yeah, he wants to go up the field, but with going that defensive the entire time, it will be tough, because in front of Jarno Oatmere, there is a little bit of a gap, about 2 seconds to the car. And now, big moment once again, as it steers again for Quirketized. Again, the same thing happening. It is a bumper over the track. He has to get back into the pits, and even though he was so quick all the way through, this is just going to give the advantage to Casey Kerwin, who has a little bit of a bigger gap now to P2, with Quirketized, of course, back into the pits. Tony Kanaan promoted up into P2.
Yeah, that's a big moment. 2nd place on the racetrack with the issue. Quirketized with problems, Pupo Lopez with problems. A lot of the drivers who have been some of the more consistent names over the last 2-3 races finding issues on the dry here in Spa. On board with Pablo GZ, 5th now in class. It'll be 4th as they're all going to step up the running order. Kanaan to P2, Daniel Gray to 3rd, and then Pablo takes over 4th with the accident to Quirketized, and it's a great spot for Pablo to be in. You've got a podium position, maybe 2 car lengths up the road. Does he dare make a move on Daniel Gray?
Yeah, that is the question. I think he will. He was looking very aggressive, very opportunistic earlier as well, trying to just, fight that car around the turns. Over here, there is more grip. When he tries to use the gap, he didn't really get a lot of space there, though. They actually touch going through the last and final turn. However, because he's on the outside, ooh, look at that. Very defensive here as he keeps the inside. Daniel Gray, it is going to be Pablo trying the outside, but in doing so, he has to go all the way around, and he has to be left space as well, which he does. He doesn't know, but luckily, it was Daniel Gray just about in front. He didn't have to leave space, but that was very close. And yeah, these battles, it seems like now, as we get further and further into the championship, now in race or track 2, race 2 of track 2, so the 4th race of 8, it is getting more and more feisty between the drivers, and they'll know that the championship standings are, you know, developing, and it'll get more serious and more serious as we go. But look at that battle once again as Pablo goes around the outside. Once again, he leaves the space, and there we go. Now finally he's going for the move, but in doing so, it's more space in front to the car that he'll have to overtake next if he wants to get more positions.
Yeah, there is a cost associated with every pass that you make because you have to deviate from your preferred line, your braking zones to make the move. And you're right, it does end up as a position gained as that spot will go in favor of Pablo, but now he's got about a 3-second or so gap to Tony Kanaan, who would be the next driver in line. Jarno, who dominated in the wet, had to start from the back of this prototype category in 10th and has done a good job at doing so. He's up to P5, and I think some more spots may be in the cards because just in front of him, it is that teal car. That's Daniel Gray, kind of the dark red or maroon car. That's Pablo GZ. So a podium is within striking distance, but Jarno's going to be running short on time if he wants to make it happen.
100%, and like you were saying earlier as well, you need to be smart with when you're going to go for the move, and something that in real life racing is also a thing, but especially in sim racing, because obviously it's all numbers, it's all, you know, trying to make sure that you're you come out as the quickest driver over a whole race. Something to be said, or something like how it's normally called, like calling it race IQ. You need to know when to go for a move and when to defend, because if you defend so hard, like for example we saw with Daniel, then later on you might not be able to attack the drivers in front. Now, as we for the first time in this race see the GTP cars overtaking the GT3s, obviously the GTPs being a lot quicker, they are now lapping the whole field, and that might be able to, you know, put everyone closer together or further apart, depending on how they get past that traffic.
And in that first race at Silverstone in the dry, Kerwin ended up expanding his race lead through the lapped traffic. It's going to come down to how much give and take you have, how aggressive you want to be. If you're Pablo, do you push to try to catch up to Tony Kanaan, who's 3 seconds up the road? You can't really lay back much because Daniel Gray is not that far out your rear view mirror either, so you're almost forced into a situation where you want to be a little bit more aggressive. Look at that. That's 4 GT3 cars lined up, and with Gray kind of bearing down on him from behind, Pablo's going to have to make these moves. Looking to the inside. He'll get one of them. That one well executed. Going to get both of the cars now before the next corner.
Ooh, that's going to be tough. Luckily, they're a little bit more spread out, and he almost times it perfectly as he overtakes the 3 of the cars before the braking zone, going around the outside. They just, these guys just know where exactly to put their cars. And just here as well, Daniel Gray, who was very close to Pablo, trying to get through the grid as well. And now a little bit more of a gap compared to what it was before. It might be that Pablo's a bit quicker, or he was a bit, oh, there we go, that was close, and that was not the optimal place to let him by, and that immediately puts the car behind of Daniel. Jarno Opmeer in a very good spot to go for the overtake. He's on the left-hand side at the moment. A shorter run to the next turn as they're side-by-side still. Jarno got a better exit through the corner because he didn't have to wait for those left cars, and Jarno now on the inside takes the position up at the P4, but Daniel is not having it. He'll keep the inside, and Jarno just about inching out in front though, as I thought they were still side by side, but yeah, he just about put his car in front, so Daniel could not keep it side by side.
Yeah, it was a good effort to keep the car there, but in the end, Jarno Opmeer gets the spot. White flag is in the air. One more long trip around this virtual Spa racetrack. Even those slower GT3s, an opportunity to draft. If you're a prototype of Jarno Opmeer or somebody else, kind of tucked in line, got a bit of the draft there. He'll now rocket through Eau Rouge. Opmeer in 4th. I think maybe just a bit too far. That next car up the road is Pablo GZ, last car on the podium. I feel like this final lap may be more of a defensive one for him as you go back to check in with the Pupo Lopez, who's had a bit of a rough one ahead of Corkatize, but other than that, at the tail end of all the prototypes that are actively on the racetrack. And how about this man, Casey Kerwin, half a lap to go in search of checkered flag number 2 on the afternoon. He is 5+ seconds ahead of Tony Kanaan.
He is doing very well. Now, looking at the team championship after this race, looking forward to that a little bit. Agbiner was doing a very good job earlier in the race, but unfortunately, looking at it right now, he is towards the back of the grid in P10, which means if they want to go and retake that P1, now one side of the job is done. Casey Kerwin obviously leading this race, having another purple sector, which means fastest on that part of the track. He's just absolutely sanding it everywhere for the, I would say probably just, bragging rights right there, because he's already 5 seconds ahead, but his teammate also needs to perform. And at the moment, he was looking good, but then something must have happened in that race for Agbiner, and he's a little bit more down the grid, which will even out the amount of points that they can get as a team here. Tony Kanaan, as we look on board, is looking very good. P2, and that could be his first podium in today's championship. Honestly, I think he's got it. He's got 3 seconds on the car behind of Pablo as Casey goes over the line to win the race B. Tony gets P2 and then Pablo over the line as well. Looking like he knew there was more in it. Jarno gets P4 from last on the grid. A very good race from all of the top 4 really. That was epic.
Jarno gets the benefit of the invert, passes 6 cars. Here's a couple more that are battling all the way down to the end of this one. For Melina, a couple of cars up the road. Can she challenge? It's Wacky Jackie and Grand Pooh Bear next up in line. They're battling for about 5th or so in class. Not enough to get to them, but she will be able to hang on and defend ahead against Idreo behind. Those 4 cars will come across the line single file. And with that, that takes us to halfway home. 4 down, 4 to go. And another big swing in the championship with the issues to Pupo Lopez and the bounce back for Casey Kerwin and Tony Kanaan.
That was awesome. Unfortunately, as we saw as well, Grand Pooh Bear dropping down a bit. He was leading the race for a bit, but he couldn't hold it. At least he got his podium last race, right?
It's great that he did that. And also the fact that, you see Tony making that jump back up. We were wondering when he was going to step up into the expectations that we had for him at the top of broadcast. It seems like this was the moment, and it makes me think that this could be something that continues on in our back half of the races. Obviously, we have 2 more tracks to go. Rain Day here with Evan Pasoko and Tom for your iRacing Showdown featuring Grand Pooh Bear. We've had so much fun so far, and before we jump into standings and take a look at that, Evan, just your general thoughts. We're halfway through, and that's given us a lot of leaders. Those top 4 making themselves pretty clear in our captain's cars, the teammates' cars as well, kind of having a few standouts. But what's your takeaway? 4 gone, 4 to go.
I think I enjoyed having the wet race first. I think the invert into the dry left things a lot more up in the air, and it's going to be kind of a replica for the next couple of races, right? We're going to go quali into dry, racing into the wet for the next race, and then we'll kind of do what we just saw for the finale. I think that's going to mean this championship likely comes down to the very end. You saw Casey Kerwin bounce back. It's interesting. Kerwin's won both of the prototype races in the dry. Jarno's won both of them in the wet. How does that impact their team standings? I think it's anybody's game again.
All right, well, that's a great answer. We'll have more on that conversation. We'll talk to Tom as well as everybody as we get ready to go right after this short break. Eldritch Rivals, welcome back after a short break. We're here with more iRacing Showdown featuring Grand Pooh Bear, Evan Rayner, Rain Day, alongside Evan Pasoko, the double Evan duty going on. We love it. And of course, Tom, we were just talking about, doing a great job today. You know, he says he's just a streamer. Sounds like a commentator to me.
I would agree.
Are we shifting gears, Tom? Are we double dipping now from now on?
Found a new job. Let's go.
Okay, watch out. There's some scouts I know listening to this thing, or at least they should be. I talked to Evan about his takeaways after 4, and now we have 4 more to go. But I want to hear from you, Tom. Biggest picture storylines heading into the back half of these races, and 2 new tracks, especially Daytona, coming up.
I think, obviously, Casey was doing a good job last race, but I feel like, you know, he needs to have a word with his teammate. He was doing so well. Like, they need to work together here to try and see if they can come home with the win.
I want more. Can you elaborate on that? We're going to check on the standings here in just a second, but I really do, when we're done with that, I want to bring that point up again, the teamwork element of it in terms of communication from our captains to our teammates, specifically how to take some of these turns, how to work their cars in a way that really, you know, from an advice perspective, from someone who does it so much to someone who might just be a little bit more like, I do it here and there, but I'm nowhere near your level of expertise. How impactful that can be and what the captain should be doing in that regard. I want to save that note, though, because I know we have our standings ready and viewers at home want to see who is where. Casey with the win there after the bounce back from the several bounces that his car took in the race right beforehand in the rain, up to 25 points again. A big story, though, Tony keeping the distance in terms of his placements, 10th or 9th earlier on, now in second. Pablo right behind, Yarno with a 4th, and Daniel Gray staying right there in that 5th, 6th space, ready to make a move if anyone gives it to him. Tom, you know, good stuff from the captain so far, but we've had a pretty consistent top 4.
100%. I mean, the big standout right here in this race was Tony Kanaan, obviously, getting that P2. So great job on him. And now that straight away pushes him up from, I believe he was last, actually, before this race. He pushes him up after that second track to P7. And it's super close there in the midfield. I would say midfield from P5 all the way down to P10. It's super close. It's anyone's game still. We still have 2 of the tracks to go. And Jarno Opmeer still leading after a not so good first race in track 1. But then after that, absolutely dominating. He got 10 more points than anybody in track 2.
Huge performance from Jarno Opmeer. Keep an eye on our F1 2-time winner. But now we've got to go over to their teammates. And this was the conversation I was kind of leaning towards you, Tom. So I know usually I'd throw to Evan here, but I want to get your thoughts on this conversation around these teammates, how their performance has been in your eyes, being obviously the more casual of the group in terms of iRacing.
Of course. Obviously, it's going to be very hard to live, tell him what to do. But he needs to motivate him. You know, Akbiner in this race, he started P1. We know he can do it. You know, all these drivers here in the teammate race standings, they're in a good spot to be able to score some good points. He did a good job in the first track. I know Akbiner can do it. I feel like Casey just needs to, give him a little bit of a fist bump. Come on, man, you can do it, and maybe tell him to to keep it clean, because after that, I'm sure they'll be able to get some good results.
Yeah, Evan, I have a feeling you would agree with that.
Oh, 100%. And I think when you look at the teammate standings, Saxo Gaming's kind of been flying under the radar for being the most consistent and being at the top there. Remember, the way the captains got their teammates too was kind of a draft. And I think Grand Pooh Bear mentioned they all made sure Casey had last draft, right? So I'm curious how that ties in with, how these drivers have experience either on the sim here on iRacing specifically, in other titles, and then in these cars too. And we take a look at the combined standings. And again, it's the kind of resurgence of Jarno in the last few races, and Wacky Jackie being one of the most consistent drivers of those teammates in the GT3s has got them on top again. Even Casey Kerwin bouncing back and getting the win. Can't do it on his own. It's good enough for some gain, but only enough to gain to P6.
One of the differences, too, that I'm just noticing out, guys, and you can comment on this, Tom, but really when we look at our first place, it's Jarno and it's Casey who are splitting the difference between most of those. And Strati, Tony, those teams, although they're placing really well, are actually just having great team performances overall. So if one of them can actually, outside of Jarno, pull out a first place win, it seems like that might be the difference there to climb back up into first, Tom.
It's really cool to see that P1 obviously has the leader in the pro class, and P2 in the full standings has the leader in the teammates class. So that's really cool to see, and hopefully we'll see a very close battle between them, and maybe those who are consistent in the middle of the pack can also have a good fight for the win.
Well, we're almost halfway done. In fact, we are. We're starting up our next race. We're going to Daytona. It's one that's famous and heard around the world. And so as they get their engines ready to go, hopefully have some conversations with their teammates. Let's get back onto the track here. Evan, Tom, take it away.
Well, we're in my backyard now in Daytona Beach, Florida, and we're sticking with the wet, right? This is that kind of format bounce that we talked about. The rain is going to be first with the qualifying session that we're watching now, and then the invert will go into the dry. Now, when we go to Road Atlanta for the last race, it'll be like we saw at Silverstone. We'll start in the dry, end in the rain. So drivers should, in theory, be able to take some of the lessons learned from Spa, but this racetrack could not be any different, Tom, than what we saw at Spa. This road course is built within the footprint of a 2.5-mile NASCAR super speedway. We'll use those 3-story tall banked corners of the NASCAR oval as a part of this road circuit as they come out of the infield portion of the racetrack here. And then turn 7 on this layout is going to be turns 1 and 2 of the super speedway. And look at that banking.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, if you have any, puddles on this side of the track, you're just going to be slipping and sliding. You don't want to be slipping and sliding on the banked part of the track. This is going to be, once again, a completely different track, like you said, compared to any of the other ones. We had the first one, Silverstone, with not a lot of elevation change. Very, very straightforward, but obviously a lot of, interesting turns there too. Then Spa with a lot of elevation changes and a lot of very sweeping long turns with a lot of puddles on the track too. And then over here, it's basically asphalt. It's it's a NASCAR track. You have the banked corners. Once again, a completely different track. So yeah, hopefully we'll also see some different results here. And so far we have, because it has been all over the place with all the results. But as we're on board now with Pablo, his heart rate has gone down to 120 beats per minute. So he's not feeling it completely yet. For his doing, he was, I believe, earlier he was on about 130, 140. So I think he's just slowly but surely building up the pressure on himself to do a good lap here.
And this is a racetrack that this man has been to many times in real life as well. And that's Tony Kanaan. He won the 2015 Daytona 24-hour race right here. Overall winner in a prototype car. And now he's trying to do it on the service, but in the wet. And look at his face. It doesn't matter how many thousands of races, how many hundreds probably of racetracks this man's been to. You put him on the sim in the wet, he's clenching up a little bit through the turns. Look at all those puddles. That's the big takeaway, too, is without the elevation changes that we saw at Spa, where the water can kind of flow down to the curbs, we saw that a lot. This racetrack is flat, aside from those NASCAR banks. So there are going to be tons of puddles.
Yeah, and you could also not get an easier way of seeing in which gear you are. You saw it earlier as well with that neon green gear kind of screen there, and as you had to turn up or gear up, you saw it like kind of blink red, which is obviously what it does as well on the steering wheel. So that's very cool to see, and you could definitely not miss that. So if he misses any gears, then he is not looking there, that's for sure. But as we're on board with Casey Kerwin at the moment, he's 1.3 seconds down on his fastest lap time so far around this track. But it's looking very tidy for the moment. Of course, on those NASCAR turns, at this point in time, going into turn 1, that's probably one of the toughest parts of this track, knowing that there's puddles now as well. You can see it's way more you can see the water on this part of the track compared to on those long turns. It's a completely different track actually on that road part and the NASCAR part.
And on board with Saxo Gaming TV, again, it's just all puddles through the exit of the infield part. A couple of spinners in front. Look out. That's going to affect the qualifying laps of those cars. Remember, same rules apply as they did earlier. You need a clean lap without incident points in order for your time to count. Now, you will not see those puddles on the bank. It doesn't mean it's not wet. It's still pretty treacherous, but they're going to be able to keep it with all the downforce glued to the racetrack because all that water slides down to the apron of the racetrack down there where it's flat. But this is one of my favorite spots, and it's the bus stop. It's the 8, 9, 10, 11 complex. Well, really, it's just a game of chicken, but how late can you brake before you throw it into the bus stop? The curbs are so very flat, and then you got to try to point and shoot right here, maybe cut a little bit of it short as you head back up to the high banks for turn 12 on this road layout, and a bit of a twitch there for Saxo on the exit.
Not bad. That looked very tidy, actually. Oop, that didn't look tidy because Heikki went across the track, has to go back into the pits and now get back out on track, of course, because you have only 10 minutes to qualify and it's already been 7. So if you lose the car right now, as is Pablo doing, goes super, super deep. A car sideways on the track as well. He's laughing, thinking, my goodness, what is happening at the moment? Then you only have 1 lap remaining. And at the moment, Casey Kerwin in P1 in the pro section. And Borja Zazo in P1 in the teammate section.
We hop over to Borja Zazo again, dealing with the exit part of the middle part of this infield part of the road course, left-hand turn number 6. See how normally you would expect them to go wide right to left, but because the puddles are on the right-hand side, you can take a really shallow entry. That's what we mean when we say you got to relearn the racetrack. That's not how you would take that corner in the dry, but you have to do it that way in the wet. And again, this is such a unique road course in the fact that it's built inside of a NASCAR oval. It was one of the world's first multi-use facilities with this 3.56-mile road circuit built into the infield of the super speedway. So this racetrack plays host to not only the Daytona 500, but the Rolex 24, as we've mentioned, bike racing, kart racing, you name it. It all happens here at the world center of racing. And much like Tony Kanaan will forever be known as an Indianapolis 500 champion. When it comes to some of the biggest races in North America and in the world, there's not any driver who would not love to have a Daytona race winner on their resume.
And currently in P8 he is with a 149.1, exploring the track and where to go and get that traction nailed down. Now you can see, trying to avoid the puddles. On the outside, on the right-hand side, there is a lot of water, a lot of standing water. And then on the inside, once again, here goes a little bit wide, just about. Keeps it within the track. And obviously within that real race, like kind of racing view, he's used to this view. As he goes wide, almost over the grass as well. Tries to get a good exit, does so just about. And now going into the next section, wow, look at that. He's just trying to keep the car in a straight line. The water is putting the car all over the place.
It does not want to behave, and I think it goes without saying, but for those tuning in and joining us who may not be familiar with iRacing, I think it's important to note you talk about this is the perspective that Tony Kanaan is used to having in his day job, right? Behind the wheel of a real race car. There is no third-person view on the iRacing service. You can only be behind the driver's seat. There is no third person over the rear wing camera, and Tony missed the bus stop on that one. So I think that's important to note. This is all you can see as the iRacing service is you can only be behind the wheel. I think it would help drivers if they could have that kind of floating third person camera, because you could see maybe the wet spots a little bit better. You could see what the cars around you are doing. Sorry, not an option on iRacing. So you do have to rely on the limited view you get out of the window, as well as the virtual mirror at the top of the screen there, which helps a little bit. And that's not the lap he wanted. That means Kerwin not going to get to put another one down. He's still top of the board, but maybe feeling confident in that number 1 lap, Tom, maybe went out to push it a little bit, but overstepped that boundary.
Just about, with Jarno Opmeer now in P2, Pablo GZ in P3. Jarno Opmeer, who usually isn't really used to the iRacing game, actually putting a really good performance so far. Heikki at the moment, a little bit off the pace with a 150, who has shown some really good pace. But we saw him earlier parking it up and actually cutting the whole track. We've seen a lot of moments here with drivers completely cutting the track. It's just one tiny mistake around this track means your whole lap is done. And once you hit that grass, then your lap will be invalidated, and then you're gonna have to do it all over again. Now the checkered flag is out, so anybody who goes over the line now will basically finish their lap, and then after that, no more laps allowed. So it's looking like the grid will be like this, but perhaps somebody will be able to improve their lap time still.
The checkered flag is out, to your point, looking for an improvement because there's a bit of a buffer within the game that allows drivers already on an active lap to finish their fast lap. We'll see if anybody else able to improve. Casey Kerwin kind of just using this as a other practice opportunity. He is not going to be able to get around to complete an entire additional lap. This racetrack, though, is quite literally half the length of what we saw at Spa, right? Spa clocked it in at 7.004 kilometers or 4.352 miles. Well, this Daytona road course, 3.560 miles or 4.0 kilometers. So just a tad more than half means the lap time is going to be much quicker. These drivers running in the 1:45-second window for those prototypes.
That's what you normally get in the dry at Spa. So, yeah, definitely a lot shorter. A lot of straights as well, which is great to be able to, get into that slipstream and overtake. So I think we'll see a little bit different of a strategy here, of a tactic of all the drivers, of where you want to be close to the car in front and where you kind of want to keep a little bit of space, especially in the first rainy race. Because if you're too close, then you will not know where the braking points are. And that's, as you've seen so far in qualifying, super, super important. But it looks like Casey's on a very, very quick lap right here. It won't count anymore, does it, Evan?
No, as soon as you get an incident point, it's not likely to count for Casey. Again, he's already rocketed at the top spot with 1:45.559. So he's only looking for improvements. You can see 6 seconds to the green on his current Delta. Curious to what point on the racetrack that's mapped to, but again, right there, session runs out of time. He was not going to be able to get that last lap counted for. And with that, qualifying has drawn to a close. It'll be the second straight race that we will qualify on wet weather conditions. Casey Kerwin hits the grid, and surprisingly, I would say, Tom, we've seen Casey, we've seen Jarno. They've both taken home the wins in the prototype races thus far, 2 apiece, but we really haven't seen a ton of them going head-to-head.
No.
Well, they are first and second, and they're going to be lined up right next to each other.
Oh la la. So we'll finally see that 1v1, or will it be a 1v1v1v1v1? Because we have a lot of people behind who will also want to mingle in those fights with Pablo being consistently at the top, Samzoid being consistently at the top as we go on board with Jarno for this start at the moment. He's on the right hand side, which will mean later on we have to look very, very far in front. He'll be on the inside of a turn, and that's when obviously he'll be able to, hopefully for him, make the move as we go a little bit further down. This is the part where it's very dangerous because you're in between of all the cars. You need to make sure you're not going to brake too deep and hit the car in front, but also watch out behind, because if they brake too late, you might have to avoid them. This is the spot you want to be, though. P1 and P2. Just have to look behind, or if you don't care about behind, just look in front and try and drive into the sunset.
The tire temperature's right there, right? 50 degrees. Or am I waffling?
Some of the drivers talking about tire temperatures. Again, this is by far, if you exclude the mammoth NASCAR banking, it is by far the flattest track that we will go to. So how do those puddles play a factor? And is it going to be maybe one of the worst conditions in the wet that we've seen thus far? Given that, we'll also see, does the rain continue to fall at the pace that it has? It got worse as we went at Spa. Look at all those puddles through the bus stop. These drivers are going to hope that as they put some laps in this race, that it's going to clear up some of those and to get back down to the kind of rough grooves of the racetrack, give them a little bit of grip. But you're going to have to be extra special and careful to get through this. And I think I'm most excited about those two in the front row. It's been the Casey Kerwin and Jarno Opmeer story so far for the prototype drivers, and they are going to line up each other side by side on the front row. 4 races down, 4 races to go. About ready to drop the green flag.
Not yet, but as the safety car goes in very, very shortly, it'll be a side-by-side battle between the P1 and P2 in the captain standings. Only 3 points are in between of both drivers, with Jarno Opmeer at the moment leading. But will Casey Kerwin fight back from that pole position to get P1 across of Jarno's P2 perhaps? If he does that, he will be the new leader in the championship as the safety car goes into the pits. So we will wait for Casey Kerwin to go very, very soon. And a big moment there then as they started going with green, green, green. It is Jarno Opmeer losing a position already, so we're not going to have that fight that we were looking for here. But maybe later, as we have the move straight away for P2, which is Pablo, straight away making sure he makes the move stick and now trying to follow the car in front of Casey Kerwin.
Yeah, it's tricky through the slop as the rain and the water splashes off of the rear tires. A race leader, Casey Kerwin, turn 3, the International Horseshoe. Kerwin a bit wide. Oatmere watches on from 3rd as they are able to get through the first couple of corners pretty clean. Look at all the puddles, though, that they have to deal with here. Left-hand high-speed kink, turn 4. Going to keep it on the racetrack. And then a heavy braking zone, turn 5, as Kerwin tries to build a small advantage. He's got to be real careful wide through the corner, trying to avoid the slick stuff there as they dodge all the puddles.
It is very tough. You can see it as well. You can hear it in the engine of Jarno there, that he was trying to find the grip, trying to find the traction through those puddles. It looks like an insane amount of waters on the track right now. And it's only going to get worse, I think, with the rain still falling. But as the cars go, perhaps they'll be able to clear a little bit of the water that is out on track, like you were referring to earlier as well. This part, though, you don't even see any cars. So where are you going to brake? How do you find the braking spot here, Evan?
Hey, there's indicators on the catch fence that indicate how many 100 feet are left to go. You saw the one there, right? 100 feet to the braking zone, but it's tough to see. And right here, how can you see the curbs? Well, you can kind of see the brake lights of the car in front of you, but a lot of it is just being aware of the other brake markers. And a big mistake. Pablo just could not get the power down on the exit of the bus stop chicane, and Jarno Oatmere will take back the number 2 spot. So Kerwin and Oatmere 1-2. After the first trip around the World Center of Racing, can Jarno close in that 2-second advantage that Casey's been able to build?
You might still have that battle, Evan, as Tony Kanaan has been doing very well here as well. He's gone up to P4 in this race, as he started a little bit further down in this race than P4. So he's got a couple of positions made up now, and looking to get closer now, actually up at the P3, I believe, as Pablo lost a bit of time. He might have a bit of struggles there. Yeah, there you go. He's been overtaken by Tony Kanaan as he goes up the inside straight away. Tony Kanaan on the outside might be... Oh, no!
Oh, he missed it.
He missed it, and there's a big moment there behind, in front, because I saw a car in the grass as well. Who is that?
Tony Kanaan, the first one. He was the first one who missed it. I'm going to put blame on you for that one because you shouted him out. And then it was Strati, the second car, and now Samsoid. So 3 different cars off and into the grass through the infield part of this road course. And just like that, Pablo now ends up back in P3.
What craziness happening right there. 3 drivers losing the car. Pablo, Samsoid, Heikki at the moment, 1 lap down. But Quirketide still in a decent spot, right behind of Daniel Gray. Pablo back in P3, very lucky there to have Tony Kanaan making a mistake. But also, I wouldn't put it all down to luck. It is the pressure he put on Tony Kanaan. He's still in a good spot though, P4. But yeah, that was unfortunate for him. Getting onto the grass, just a tiny mistake can upset the car. Get a little bit of rear instability, and then completely the car turns into a lawnmower.
It really does, and now Pablo sees look at all that water. I mean, that is just standing water for about 25 feet on the exit of the bus stop.
He needs to yield as he goes over the track earlier. Still, he needs to yield. So you can see cars behind. They're going to have basically slingshotted into his rear, trying to overtake him with all the extra speed that he didn't have because he had to yield. And on that straight, you don't want to yield. As Casey Kerwin goes very, very wide. He makes a huge mistake. And now Jarno Oatmere will 100% be able to go for the move, no?
Casey Kerwin's able to get back in front. It was a huge opportunity for Jarno, but Casey was able to right the ship before it was too late and gets on track ahead of Jarno. No time penalty. Casey again missing the corner wide. Typically not going to result in a penalty, as if you cut a corner, you'll likely get one of those black flag warnings. And now Jarno, though, has closed the gap. That 2-second advantage that Casey had built up is gone. Look at that bit of a twitch, another slide. Jarno drifting through the infield here at Daytona as he's dealing with all of that spray coming off of the back of prototype leader Casey Kerwin. These two are doing battle. They are almost 10 seconds ahead of everybody else in class.
They are very, very evenly matched between each other. Oh man, as Casey Kerwin was headed straight into the wall, he managed to make sure that he could turn the car just about in time to not hit the wall. It's very, hard. It's almost counterintuitive to, straight just straighten out the car and then turn last minute when you get that grip. Because in the rain, it works completely different. You don't have the grip at all times. When you go through the puddles, you just need to keep the car straightened out and not lock up the tires. And then when you finally have grip, you go for the turn. As now, big battles as well between Melina and the car behind over Saxo Gaming, who is not in that P1 spot right here, right now. He was very quick last time out, but he seems to be struggling a little bit more in the rain around Daytona, having to go through the grid once again.
It feels like these GT3s are way slower than the prototypes when you look at the speed chart, but it doesn't feel like they're slow when you're behind the wheel. And look how close the GTs are as well, as there goes a prototype. How about a flyby on the outside through the banking, and that car just disappears into the mist as they head down the backstretch of the NASCAR Oval. And again, you're trying to find those braking indicators on the catch fence right-hand side of your screen, and then kind of timidly turn in. Is Pupo Lopez 7th right now in class for the prototypes, with some work to do, try to bounce back to the form that he established in the opening 2 races.
100%, and I think they're summarizing it very well in the chat as well. Casey is fast, but Jarno just doesn't make mistakes with this rain at the moment, which is very impressive. And I mean, we've seen it as well last race. Those mistakes was what costed Casey Kerwin the win, and he had the pit later on. Remember, he completely flipped the car, which was incredible to see, but obviously not so much for his championship chances. I would love to know, in the chat at the moment, who do you think will come out on top in this fight? Jarno in P2, Casey Kerwin in P1. Who will take the win here in this race?
I know I'm taking Jarno in the wet based on what we've seen,
yeah,
but Casey's been better in the dry, and you get 4 of each, so it's just about as even of a battle as we can have between these two. And again, looking at the first time that they've ran 1-2 all night long. Again, that mammoth, that might as well be a lake on the exit of the bus stop. They're going to go all the way up to the wall to get away. Look at that water puddling up on the apron. You would never take that flat part through the corner, but that is standing water. And Jarno clearly made the mistake in the bus stop. A slowdown penalty, has to yield before he could get back on the throttle. Curious how big of an error it was, but that's going to give a ton of time in favor of Casey.
And Pablo is waving to somebody right here, whether it is going to be Jarno or somebody else. I don't think it's Jarno yet, because there's still a decent gap. But he is virtually and physically waving in his seat at the moment, saying bye-bye to whoever he just overtook. Stradi in P4 at the moment, just about smelling that podium. Will he be able to capitalize on mistakes from Pablo in front? He looked very comfortable, Pablo, so I don't think there will be a mistake anytime soon. But Strati is ready if there's any mistakes coming up. It seems, though, the track is getting a bit quicker, or Strati is getting quicker and getting more used to the conditions. He is about 6 tenths up, 7, 8 now, 9 almost, going into the start of the lap. So he has plenty more time to gain here throughout the lap.
Yeah, and maybe a little bit of both. You can see his indicators helpful, because I'm kind of cheating. Looking at his telemetry, you see those purple numbers. Casey Kerwin has the fastest lap and the fastest last lap. That's kind of the best indicator when you've got a race like this with multiple classes, is to just kind of look at the numbers and see how that speaks. But you know, Stradi's been on the move. Even Tony Kadan, having slipped to P5 with that error, he's bounced right back into it, trying to improve with 154 the last time out. And I think it is these drivers finding the comfort level. There's only so much kind of warm-up or prep you can do in a 10-minute qualifying session in the wet to learn this racetrack. You got to make mistakes to know where that line is. And we go back on board with Jarno. He has not lost the number 2 spot, but Casey Kerwin, is that a 16-second advantage? Oh, and another mistake there on the entry to the bus stop, and he's going to lose it. That is huge, because, another mistake now from Strati. Everybody is making mistakes. He completely cut the bus stop, got a black flag he has to yield, and is that going to put Pablo all the way to P2?
That was crazy. Absolutely crazy. Jarno makes a mistake straight away after behind. Strati just completely cuts the track as if there was no turn there. Overtakes Jarno, but in turn he got a slowdown penalty, which meant he lost the position again. Pablo, though, out of nowhere, was like, you know what, guys, I'll stay calm, get both of the positions, and he's up at the P2 now. A big gap to P1, however, but yeah, doing a very good job here, and that's what I was saying earlier. Have to stay consistent, because you can... Oh, there we go, and he's not consistent. It is almost the commentator curse as we go on board with Pablo. Loses the car still in that position, however, but luckily... Jarno did not lose too much time. He is in P5 at the moment, still behind those prototype cars in front. So I think there's going to be a big, big battle between all of them. In the meantime, too, as we look to the teammate side, we have Storm Melina at the moment. Oh, as I say, she goes to P3. She was in P2, but she's just been overtaken by HCDZ with the amazing name. As we look on board at the moment, trying to get that position back. Storm Melina says, no, 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 no. I'm not going to have you let it that easy. I'm not going to have you let it. And they're saying in the chat as well, you can see it on the screen, get him back. And she's doing that exactly right now, but she doesn't see anything.
Oh, there's another car up there. Three-way battle as it's Storm Melina, HDZZ. You got Joshimiz and Borja Zazu not that far up. And look at this. Three-way battle. These GT3 cars do not pull away from each other like the prototypes do. And I don't think there's a single time we've jumped on board with Melina and she hasn't been smiling through all of it. Good or bad, right way or wrong or backwards, having a blast in the rain. And she's got the best seat in the house at the battle in front of her. But look out, fast prototype, knock, knock, coming through. How can that car find its way past this trio?
You can never lose when you're having fun, right? And it's looking like Melina is having a whole load of fun right now, also being in a good position. But even when she wasn't in a good position a few races ago, she was still having a big, big smile. So that's awesome to see. Now, as we look on board with Casey Kerwin once again, he is just chilling out there. He doesn't even need to go and take any more risks. But knowing what he's done in the past few races, I think he's still gonna take those risks, Evan. So we might see some weird things happening here at the front.
Yeah, his last lap, it was a 1 minute 51.506. That is more than a second slower than his fastest lap, so clearly he's conserving a little bit. But the kicker is that last lap is still faster than everybody else's fastest lap in this session. He can just put it on cruise control, put it on autopilot, and it is still ridiculously fast. And I posed the question to you earlier about the socks or the race boots. So race gloves, that's another one that most of the drivers are using tonight. You fan of those?
Well, I will say, once you, as we have a move right here, very close between GT3 and Prototype, Tony Kanaan getting past now as well. I think, honestly, racing gloves could be beneficial. I've had a few times with my wheel, for example, that I lose the grip of my wheel, but I think mostly because, you know, those hands get flipping sweaty, okay? They get sweaty, so mostly the racing gloves are a very good protector of the wheels, because, you know, once you have those very sweaty hands, especially against Alcantara, because just like real life wheels, right? You have Alcantara racing wheels as well. And I can tell you, if you put water or sweat, especially sweat, bodily fluids on Alcantara, it does not look great after a few... Ooh, here we go then. Pablo makes a mistake. He's not happy with himself right now because he was in that P2. And like I was saying earlier, consistency is key. And that is exactly not what's happened to his race right now.
Big mistake, and it's going to drop Pablo GZ down to 5th. Both Tony Kanaan and Jarno Opmy are able to make the pass, so the story of mistakes continue here at Daytona, and even chat's recognize it. It's the chicane keeps getting them in. It's so tough. Again, because it's such a flat racetrack, right? As somebody completely missed the corner in front of him. That was Tony Kanaan, who just missed it entirely. I think he had to lock it up to avoid getting into the wall. And he is going to drop down to P5. So TK loses 2 spots with that mistake. Goes to show, though, point proven, that can happen to even the very best.
100%. Now, as we are on the last and final lap right here, we saw Tony Kanaan still battling very, very hard in P5 at the moment, right behind of Pablo and Jarno. Jarno managed to get back up to P3 after he lost so many positions all the way down to P6. And yeah, Tony in the last and final lap, it's a heartbreak really. It's being able to stay so consistent for the entirety of the race. You saw it on Pablo's face as well. He was absolutely ruined there, knowing that he did such a good job. And then in the last and final lap, or the second to last lap, you lose the car and you lose so many positions.
Casey Kerwin, final few corners, some lapped traffic in the GT3 cars to navigate. They will yield to the outside. Casey's run pro NASCAR races here at Daytona that had an added bus stop here on the exit of the Super Speedway. Not on this version of the Daytona Road Course, and he will come to take the checkered flag. Maybe his most dominant win tonight, and for the first time in the rain, Casey Kerwin reigns supreme.
Ooh, once again, a big moment then. Before the end of the race, Jarno makes a mistake. He just about could not get to the end there, and he gets overtaken by a few drivers. Last minute, and now Pablo is back, I think, ahead of Jarno at this point in time. Tony Kanaan now gets onto the podium after that mistake earlier. Now, side by side, coming through the last and final couple of turns later on. I believe he's right there with Pablo on the inside. It is very, very close. Who will take it?
Tony barely topside. How about that? Side by side on the high banks. And Tony Kanaan gets third ahead of Pablo GZ by about 1/10 of a second. So what a bounce back for Tony. And he has started to shine in those dry races, but he also gets a best result for the night here in the wet weather.
Oh, yeah. That was very, very close. Only 1/10 in between, and then 8/10 behind Jarno Opmeer as we are going board with Melina, who is right behind the car in front. Probably can't get the overtake done, but you never know what will happen, because I believe there's still a chicane in between of her and the finish line. As on the right-hand side, a prototype comes by. You will not want to go and make a mistake right now. Let's see what it's going to be then. And I believe that's it. Almost. Yep, it is. That was, ladies and gents, the first race at Daytona in the wet, but there will be a dry race as well, and I think we might see a completely different race for that one.
Well, a great showcase at our start in Daytona. It was wet, but that track was on fire. We saw some big performances, especially from Casey Kerwin. Evan, you know, when you talk about just far and away in the lead, Casey, what makes him so good? What makes this possible here in this Twitch Rivals? Why he's so far ahead and picking up speed here in this Daytona racetrack?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is he's a pro at so many different levels of the sim, right? Every time we'd go the onboard look with him, you see the big trophy behind him. That's his NASCAR World Championship trophy that he's won on the service. But he does not only do that. He is routinely driving Porsches and other major road racing championships here on the sim, and that's what makes him so versatile. And you can see it's been a bit of a learning process for him with the rain too, right? It's new for him. He has yet to have that in any of his World Championship stuff, but first off, race one back at Silverstone, we're kind of singing his praises. And then 2 races in the rain, we're thinking doom and gloom for Casey, right? A bad night. All of a sudden, he's back. And I think him and Jarno are starting to separate themselves. Could have been a 1-2 for them in the end. Too many mistakes for Jarno, which had been rare for him tonight. Those two are kind of the story of the show for the prototype drivers. But I think that goes to show why Casey's so good, because he is fast in just about any vehicle here on iRacing.
Yep, and consistently, even when he's getting knocked down, and whether it was on the first track that we saw and he had to kind of pick himself back up mentally, he finds a way to stay and get into the groove again with that confidence level. You know, it's so high with Casey. Other drivers maybe not built up in that confidence yet in terms of results, but starting to find their way. I'm talking about Storm Molina, who actually puts in a great position. I think she podiums here in this one. I think it was P2.
Yep.
But it was a really nice shift from where she had been in some of the back half of some of these races, Tom. I think that's a good sign for her and her squad going forward.
I think it just shows, smiles win. You gotta keep on the smile, and then at some point you'll get the results. So yeah, great to see that from her as well. And I mean, it's only up from here as well. There's 3 races to go still, right? 3 races.
Yep.
1 right here in the dry, and then 1 more in the rain, and 1 more in the dry.
Well,
this is it.
What makes this so interesting for those who might just be joining us here? We're a little bit more than halfway through. We've got 1 more race on Daytona before we go to our final track of the day. But as we take a look at the standings, this is about 3 different layers of competition. 1 are captains. They're going against each other in GTPs. Their teammates chosen by draft are going against each other in GT3, slightly slower cars. But that aggregate score is being put together. So while Casey is dominated, I think this is maybe his 3rd first place so far today. His teammate has been trying to kind of find those consistency moments within the track and has slowly but surely, made strides. Strati, though, and Tony have certainly been top names, Evan, that I've seen. Tony specifically making a big push, a 1/10 of a second, squeezing out the podium over Pablo GZ, and that means a lot because his teammate Borja is dominating in the teammate section.
Yeah, it's all going to come down to the averages, right? You'd almost rather have two cars who are consistently finishing second and third in each of their classes than you would want a guy finishing first and last at each. And you take a look at the captain standings, Casey Kerwin has bounced right back. He just scored 25 points in that first race at Daytona alone. That's almost the entire tally he got at Spa with 27. So Casey, with a big bounce back, will have the consequence of kind of facing the opposite end of the invert, but on the dry, I think he would prefer to be inverted headed into a dry weather race than he would a wet weather race. But Pablo GZ's been so consistent. Tony Kanaan's been one of the top 3 cars the last, 2-3 races. He's just kind of hindered a little bit by the slow start he had.
And talk about teammates. Borja doing so much work. Speaking of Tony, his teammate, 25 yet again, but Storm Molina comes in with an 18. We had mentioned her. A great performance, and HC Dizzy rounding out that podium.
100%. Looks very, very good. And I think, Casey Kerwin has had a little bit of a chat with his teammate, because look at that. A beautiful result here in P7 from Agbiner. Yeah. Getting some really good points. So I think when we get to that, point standings of the teams together, it'll be a bit closer now.
Tom, just to point out, the only Mercedes being driven in this entire teammates, do you think that was a conversation that maybe Casey had, or is this something that Agbiner might have just gone and said, I feel more comfortable here?
Perhaps his favorite car, or perhaps maybe that's what has made him lose that car a few times. We'll have to wait and see on his comments later on. But
yeah, it's an outlier either way. So far, we've seen an outlier, but on that backside, we'll see if it continues now to move in the right direction. Borja, though, over the teammates, 95 points. That's pretty cemented in first place for now, and taking another first in the beginning of our tracks, races on track 3. Saxo Gaming right behind, and HC Dizzy with a nice back half of this. Started out with only 18 on the first track after 2 races, but after track 2 and now a great start to track 3, certainly looking like second place. Even first place could be in the future. But as we look at the overall standings for our teams, it's Tony Kanaan and Borja, Evan, who take the lead with Tony's resurgence.
Yeah, Casey and Agbiner have been climbing it back up, but that's the story, is Tony Kanaan and Borja jump into the top spot. Look at that, 40 points combined between the two of them, and that's only the first trip out. They had combined for 49 in both races at the prior 2 tracks. So they are on pace for their best single track showing of the night, and quite possibly the best single track showing of the night out of any of the teams, if they can just have a marginally good second race in the drive.
I mean, conservatively, Tom, we're talking about even if you have those points and you get 60, that's still, by and large, the best overall track score for any team.
Yeah, 100%. And like I said, it's about consistency here, with Tony Kanaan starting up a bit slower, then getting back into it and scoring big points, and his teammate doesn't need to do the best job, and he did anyway. So that's when you get, that amount of consistency throughout all the races. 49 points, 40 points, and they're going to score even more in race 3 right now.
Yeah, and for people jumping in as well, this is something that I think the gaming world has started to really appreciate and dive into, but there's still so much to uncover. I mean, when you talk about the last 3 years, the popularity of racing and driving, especially in ties with Twitch and the gaming world, I wonder if people understand some of the elements that you guys are bringing up too. I mean, the physicality of it all, Evan, the gloves, the sweat, the boots, it really has an impact. I'm not sure people understand the depth of that impact that they're watching on screen, because it all just looks like turning a wheel.
Yeah, there's routinely where real-world drivers who participate in sim racing will say that, their heart rate gets up higher on the sim than it does in the real car. And you can do so many things to replicate that feeling, right? The only thing you can't really feel on the sim is the car underneath you, right? And we've seen Graham Puber with the motion rig to try to fill that gap, but the monitors, the gloves, the wheels, I mean, there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of different kind of pedals and shifters and wheels that you can tailor make your sim setup to be the most comfortable for you. I think the biggest thing that I love the most about sim racing in this space is that there's so many other world championships and esports out there that are such standalone, but there is nothing that can replicate the real world sport like sim racing. Right?
Yeah.
Not yet could we go play basketball on a game and shoot hoops like you can on the sim, getting in the car just like it is in the real world. It is such a unique space in the broader esports landscape.
Yeah, I mean, to hook in there, I mean, I went from just only learning it on the simulator. Right? I started when I was 15 years old. I'm now 23, 8 years ago. And no real life racing experience whatsoever. And then with just my experience of, racing on the simulator, I was able to drive racing cars. I've driven a Formula 4 car, I've driven a Formula 1 car, and it felt kind of similar. The only thing that doesn't feel similar is obviously the G-forces, right? Like getting pushed to the left and right and feeling the car underneath you. Like you can feel it through your hands with the feedback, the force feedback through the wheels. And a game like iRacing is so realistic that when you go from sim racing into real racing, you kind of have the skills already to keep the car, not necessarily keep the car on the road, but to kind of know what to do to make the car go quick. But obviously there's a lot of stuff to still learn in real as well. And I'm not gonna say I go from sim racing to real life and be quick or whatever, but you learn the skills or some of the skills that you need in real life as well, which is absolutely epic. So I can imagine that if Casey goes into real racing, he'd do a decent job at it.
Well, one of the coolest elements as our game is getting ready to go here that I've noticed is seeing professionals who have done it on the track, who have won real world championships in racing, now be able to replicate similar results in an esports because the sim is so closely compared. You mentioned hoops, Evan, and I'm a big basketball fan. I live in LA, so LeBron coming on and playing, NBA 2K or whatever, he's probably not going to win against your best esports player.
Yeah.
But, Tony coming in and taking it from an actual car into iRacing is able to have this type of performance. Pretty exciting stuff for iRacing. Certainly, I'm sure our fans, if they're not into it already, looking to see how they can get their first rig. As our game starts again, it's on the drive with Daytona. So, Evan and Tom, take it away before we change into our last track.
Yeah, it really is one of one, that tie-in with the real world and the sim world. And I don't know if somebody's done a better job of making their rig at home feel like a real race car than that man right there. And again, it should be no shocker. Look at the speed difference. Look how they are going to attack these corners oh so differently. And, Daytona's used to be in the wet. It gets wet down here a lot in Florida, especially during the summertime. So this racetrack is no stranger to those wet weather races. But on this clean, dry asphalt, this flat racetrack, you're going to be able to see these drivers get on a razor's edge. And I'm curious how much these lap times will pick up from the wet weather race we just saw to here in the dry.
It's gonna be crazy, I think. I think for a true kind of perspective of seeing the cars go quick around the track, this race will be awesome. It'll be absolutely epic. As we can see, Tony Kanaan is ready to hit the track running and to also hit everybody else who is getting in their way. But he's starting around the midway pack here in P7, as he, of course, did a very good job. He got P3 last race, so on the podium. But that means he has to go with that reverse grid that we have coming up right now. He has to go through the grid. So, who's starting in P1? Kurkatize, but he is quick as well. But he just had a bit of an unfortunate race last time out. So I don't think it'll be easy for those that are currently at the back in this race to get up the grid and to do a good job here. Now also in the GT3 section, Sexo Gaming, very quick driver in P1, Grant Pooh Bear and Edro in P2 and P3 with Agbiner, who could do a very good job for his teammate, and for himself obviously, in the championship in that P4 position.
Yeah, I think we've kind of realized that with all the inverts and all the different tracks and varying weather conditions that we've seen just about every single driver in the field get a good result. So you cannot look at anybody and say, oh, well, they're going to get the benefit of the invert, but I don't see them hanging on to a top three. I think everybody has a fighting shot, and it'll be fun to see what happens here in the dry. Both Casey Kerwin and company going to get the invert. What can Jarno do from BNP5, right? Things kind of fell apart for him in the prototypes towards the end of that wet weather race. But now he gets the benefit of starting 2-3 rows ahead of the drivers that he's been kind of fighting with for the most of the night. So can Jarno break through early? It is going to be a fun one. And there is no funner track in these prototypes than here at Daytona sometimes. They race here every year in the 24-hour, and tonight on the dry conditions for race number 6 on the day, pace car off and away, looking for the green flag as we're back underway.
Here we go then. It's green, 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 as it shows on the screen. And now it is Jarno Opmeer on board. He's trying to keep the inside, trying to go for some overtakes, but he gets closed off then by the car in front. The cars in front are just, oh, big hit, 2 hits actually. But it doesn't give Jarno Opmeer a penalty. The car behind had to go and leave a little bit of space as well. Now goes up the inside with Jarno right up in front of the yellow car. All the way around, but doesn't really get the traction nailed down. And that means Pablo tries to go and keep it hanging around the outside of the car of Jarno, but he can't quite. As you can see right now, they can go for some really audacious moves without having to worry about the car completely going straight due to the weather. On the inside now then of Daniel Gray, we have a big move as well. A little bit of rubbing and racing, which means when the car in front or behind hits you, you know, it's okay. You can do it, but don't do it too much because you don't want to have damage and you don't want to have the car in front or behind almost lose it due to that little contact.
Yeah, using their fenders a little bit to their advantage as they get back up onto the high banks, and they're all chasing down this man. It's Samsoid, prototype leader, off of the high banks of the NASCAR Oval. Let's check it out. First time at speed through the bus stop chicane. Those curves are pretty flat, but they're rough at that speed, and it was pretty clean for those top 3 through as Samsoid, Pupo Lopez, and Corkazide 1, 2, and 3 as they get through the high banks. Pablo GZ slides down to P4. Jarno Opmeer still in 5th. You're on board now with Pablo GZ back there in the number 5 spot. Now, number 4 spot, I should say. But the challenge is from behind. Jarno on board with him. Going to try to go the long way around as maybe a battle for the race lead as well.
Ooh la la, it is happening as Daniel Gray, we saw earlier, fighting in this mid-pack, has lost a lot of ground and he's now down to last in this race. With now Casey Kerwin already behind of Jarno Opmeer. I think finally, Evan, we will see that battle because right here, Casey Kerwin trying to go for a move on Jarno right in front, and he'll have to get by of currently the P2 in the driver standings. He'll try and do it already here then as he goes up the inside, manages to keep the space there with Jarno on the outside. And perhaps he will be able to get out in front. I believe at the moment he's just about inching out in front. But will he be able to use the speed on the exit on this long straight? He's going to be, while battling, losing times to the car in front. And of course, we get back to that race IQ. How much do you want to battle and lose time? And then, of course, have to gain it back later.
And you can see right there, Sai was losing out, so he will tuck in line as Jarno wins that battle for the moment. They'll continue to run 5 and 6 on board with Jarno. Look at those top 4 lined up, and a penalty. Jarno cut the entry to the bus stop. Looks like it's also a penalty to that was Corkazide. So 2 drivers will have to yield penalties for cutting the entry to the bus stop. It'll cost them significantly, and it's a big gain for Casey Kerwin, who's going to launch himself up the leaderboard into at least P4.
What is very unfortunate for both those drivers who just got a yield there is that there's not any turns coming up. So they have to yield on that long straight, which is going to lose them way more time because they have to go slow and then they have to get up the speed. But because it's such a long straight, anybody behind is just going to be rocketed past, which is very, very unfortunate for those two. But I'm thinking they're not going to be the only one who will be getting a yield there, and which means they're going to have to slow down within a certain amount of seconds because they cut the track. Because it's very easy in the try to cut the track there. Because if you want to be quick, you have to just be on the limit there with the track limits.
And on board now with your overall and class leader in the prototypes. A bit of a mistake that time for race leader Samsoid. What could Pupo Lopez do from second in line? Big head of steam. You're watching from the mirror. Does he make a challenge for the race lead? He knows it's coming. To the inside he goes, side by side for the race lead. You're on board with Pupo Lopez, who gets the lead into the bus stop. Clean in and out. Mighty good pass.
Ooh, that was wide on the exit, but luckily he just about kept it within the limits, and that means he will be now in P1 with Samsoid closing in due to the fact he has that slipstream now. You can see it in the rear view mirror. That car is getting bigger and bigger with every second that passes, and now as they get close to the turn 1, I think Samsoid is looking to maybe send it up the inside to